Yep, another hangout. I'm hoping that when I say go live and before I actually, or start to hang out before I actually go live, it'll put out an announcement, because other forms of notifying people of hangouts aren't working very well. Although, even though it seems to be that everybody's saying, you know, the 6 people who come saying that they don't get notifications, other hangouts don't seem to be having the same issue as far as I can tell. Maybe they are. It's like not like I've been visiting a lot of them lately. But anyway, today what I had on my mind to do is just this another rampage or crusade, if you will, against what is loosely called New Age. Because it's the major problem in the conspiracy realm, as far as I can tell. Here we got a quote from George Orwell, and you can see that, I think, pretty easily on the screen there. It says, "The great enemy of clear language is insincerity. When there is a gap between one's real and one's declared aims, one turns, as it were, instinctively to long words and exhausted idioms like a cuttlefish squirting out ink." And that's where, of course, I got the title to my hangout today, Word Soup and Cuttlefish, because that's what word soup is. It's the ink by a cuttlefish meant to distract the prey. And in this case, actually, when it comes to the quote-unquote powers that be, we are the prey, but they are more like, I guess a better analogy would be like an anglerfish. That I think that's the one that has that little lure out in front of its mouth to get unsuspecting fish. And I think it's a very deep sea fish that's pitch darkness, but it has this glowing appendage in front of its mouth that attracts its prey. And so then when the prey come to see the beautiful light, they get eaten. And this is exactly what New Age or Luciferian doctrine is, the upside down, inside out doctrine that makes, you know, as you can read in the book of Enoch, that makes Satan the good guy and Yahweh the bad guy. So what I wanted to do is show you that how this works in the New Age movement. Of course, you know, I don't particularly like the title, but it proves a point that you can, and they even say here, you could make a website out of it and they wouldn't care. The inspiration for this idea came from watching philosophy debates involving Deepak Chopra. I wrote a blog post about it if you're interested. After sifting through hours of New Age rhetoric, I decided to have a crack at writing code to generate it automatically and speed things up a bit. So he cobbled together a list of New Age buzzwords and cliche sentence patterns, and this is the result. So what is this for? Put it on your website as a placeholder text, print it out as a speech for your yoga class, and see if anyone can guess a computer wrote it. Use it to write the hottest new bestseller in the self-help section, or give false hope to depressed friends and family members. There's another one called a site that they found out later, I'd already beat them to it, called wisdomofchopra.com. And it does the same thing. And so the point being that New Age is word soup. The things they talk about, especially the trigger word consciousness, the ubiquitous word that means really nothing at all, because people don't like to define their terms, especially as I've been going on about people who take an irrational approach to finding truth, which is to say seeking truth but not finding it. They use this word soup, and it sounds like something profound. And they pretend to understand it when they really don't. Why else do they keep going to these people, these gurus, to listen to them spew out this word soup and never really get anywhere with it? It won't lead them to truth. It'll lead them in circles. It'll lead them to Satan. Of course, they bristle at that. But you know what? Christians have been made to bristle for years and years and years. And that's, again, the other problem I've been bringing up about Christians in the conspiracy realm not being salt and light, and being more, putting unity with the world at a higher value than representing Jesus to these people that we had a chance to witness to. But because we aren't salty, because, as the Bible says in one passage, we are not adequately being the aroma of Christ, then the result is that people are just falling for this New Age crap. And so I just wanted to show that quote from Orwell about, what word soup is the term we use now, and that it's used to confuse people, and that this website proves, and the other one they link to proves, that New Age talk about consciousness and ascension and all that is just a bunch of nonsense, which, like I said, if nonsense is your approach to seeking truth, then you will like New Age philosophy. And you will believe Lucifer's lie, which is that, like I said, mentioning Book of Enoch, that Yahweh is the bad guy and Lucifer's the good guy. And that's where this religion leads. It's also, as I mentioned several times before, Truth is Stranger Than Fiction has a full-length documentary called Ethereal, and it shows that what passes for cosmology today, especially quantum physics, is nothing but this New Age word soup. And not just word soup, it is the religion itself, where they will wind up worshiping Lucifer. They already are indirectly, but what happens during the tribulation is that Lucifer wants it directly then. That's what it's all about with the mark of the beast. It is a pledge of loyalty, a commitment to stamp yourselves or tattoo yourselves or chain yourselves to Lucifer as giving him your loyalty and your worship. And that's what the mark of the beast is all about. So this kind of the New Age teachings are leading people to be susceptible and gullible to that point in history. And so this is all, as I've said before, theosophy, etc. It goes by a gazillion names because it has to be given a sugar coating for each different group of people, each society, or each segment of it in different times in history. And beginning, I think, mostly with what was called transcendental meditation, which was just Hinduism for Westerners back in the 60s. After the drug culture got started, there's no coincidence there, that it has been packaged for the Western world as science. And that's why mainstream science is so nonsensical, so irrational, so theoretical, as to have abandoned the scientific method, because that method stands in the way of their fantasies and their wishes and their eventual worship of Lucifer directly. That's the path. That's the fork in the road. And this website that I'm showing right now is just proof of that. I mean, plus the other things I mentioned, like Ethereal, and the quote by Orwell, that this is where the New Age word soup takes you. And looking at the Bible, where I have been bemoaning the lack of backbone in the Christian community inside these conspiracy communities, is where Jesus is saying, and this is Matthew 5:13, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its seasoning, how can it be made salty again? It's good for nothing but being thrown outside where people will trample it. And you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a jar. Rather, they set it on a lampstand so it provides light to everyone in the house. Likewise, let your light shine for everyone so they can see the good that you do and give honor to your Father in the heavens." Just doing the good, I need to emphasize, is not going to point people to God, because there are non-godly people who do good things. So if you don't add words to the actions, you won't lead people anywhere. So Christians in conspiracy realm need to stand up and be salt and light. The door is already pretty much closed for that opportunity. We had it for at least the last couple of years that I've been more involved in conspiracy things, and at least on YouTube, that the Christians have not unified as Christians, first of all, before they try to unify on anything else, and stood up and said, this is the real God. This is Jesus who rose from the dead. Don't fall for this New Age Luciferian stuff. But they don't do it. There are only a few that I've seen actually stand up and take the heat that comes with it. And Jesus said he would be ashamed of those people. I had another passage here. I know I've mentioned that other one before about when Jesus comes in his glory, that if anyone was ashamed of him, he will be ashamed of them. And this verse here, this is, I think it's this, 1 Peter, where he says in verse 3:15, Always be ready with a defense of your hope to anyone who demands it, but do so with deference and respect. Then your conscience will be clear, so that if anyone talks trash about you, they will be utterly silenced by your good behavior. It's better to suffer for doing good if God wills it than for doing evil. Notice also that the anointed, that is to say Jesus the Christ, that's what anointed means, Christ, Messiah, suffered for failures, the righteous for the sake of the unrighteous, that he may lead you to God. So what does that? People twist that verse, always be ready with an answer for the hope that you have in some versions. It isn't just your personal testimony. That's not what's being talked about here. It's talking about suffering for standing up. And so to honor God, we have to always be prepared to defend what we believe. Some people have the cliche that truth needs no defense. Well, if that were true, then you wouldn't even need to say truth needs no defense. That's a defense of truth. And also that people seem to think that being a Christian means being a punching bag or a doormat, and that's not true either. And they will cherry pick verses to try to support that. And I've gone over it before. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus not do? Those two videos. And so what that means is being able to justify your faith as opposed to all the false beliefs. And that doesn't mean you have to be an expert on all the false beliefs. You need to be an expert on the one true one. And Christians can't be bothered. So, and we lost a terribly, unique opportunity in history, one last ditch effort to get people to turn to a creator. They did turn to a creator, but as far as they know, they think a creator, but it's ABC, anything but Christianity, anything but Jesus. They want to believe in some other creator, whether it's aliens or randomness, which is, like I said, an eternal regression, which answers no questions at all. It's a cop-out. Or whether it's Lucifer, the light bringer, the one who's revealing the things that God restricted us from, and they resent that. But that, too, is a trap. It's always been a trap. And people are falling for it who think they're awake. So, anyway, we as Christians are supposed to have something to say when we stand up. Now, there are some Christians I've met over the years who are very belligerent about it and think the way to turn people to Jesus is to show them God's wrath. That is not how you do it. Jesus said, and Paul said, that this is an offer of adoption, and you can't scare or coerce or trick people into accepting a relationship offer of adoption. So we have to remember how to do this. And this doesn't mean being a doormat. Again, deference and respect are not the same as being so passive and chameleon-like that you don't shine your light or be salt. This is, again, about balance, about keeping things in perspective and keeping them paired with the opposites so that we find the balance point. So we have, like I said, have said before about that book that I did commentary on, the reformers and their stepchildren. There is a balance point between, it's a paradox between holiness and peace. Holiness is separation, peace is togetherness. And we can't think that peace is the most important thing above all else. Holiness is equally important. You have to balance the two. And you do that by having exemplary behavior while being bold and standing up and being salt. It's not easy, but Christians, the churches are not training Christians to do this. They're training them to be solipsists, basically, which is to say, keep your faith from others. Keep your faith to yourself instead of just keep the faith. The Christians in the churches and Sunday schools are just, it's what I would call group therapy. And that's all well and good. People need that, but they also need some food, some meat, as Hebrews 6 talks about it, which is to say having something ready to give a defense for the hope that you have in this highlighted verse here. So if the world is running as fast as it can toward Lucifer, The church is partly to blame for not stopping them, not even saying, hey, you're running the wrong way, not directing them to the right way, because that would be too offensive and too disunifying. When, like I said, Jesus said he did not come to unify, he came to divide. Because that's what truth does. It'll unite some people and divide others, and people don't want the division. They think that is the highest goal. But that's not the Christian's highest goal. The Christian's highest goal is truth, not unity. You can't have them both. So anyway, I once again just wanted to make a point, which is that word soup is a distraction. It is a way to confuse people. And that when it comes especially to New Age terminology like consciousness, like I hit this reionize electrons button, it'll give you some new age word soup, like you got at the top here. You could put that in any New Age site and they would think that's profound. This is what you get when you hit this button, reionize electrons. You will get a nice web page that looks real and will fool any New Ager. They'll think they just don't get it because it's so profound. So if you have a charismatic personality, especially, you can lead people by the nose down to the Luciferian trap. And Orwell warned us about that. Sites like these warned us about that. The Bible warns us about that, about deception in the last days, false Christ. So we don't have any excuses as a Christian community. And as I've mentioned before, where Jesus said about people who are lukewarm, who won't take a stand, who want to straddle the fence. Jesus said, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth because I wish you were either hot or cold. And it's one thing to be a completely worldly Christian, as were the Corinthians, but it's another thing to be so uncaring that you're just dead. That's what spiritual death is like. It's a state of not caring, and which incidentally is the goal, I think, of, just for lack of a more precise term, Hinduism is, or unity with Brahma or something. It's where you cease to exist. Jesus hates that. It nauseates him. He wants you to be hot or cold. Either be his bitter enemy or be his best loyal supporter. But don't be indifferent. Don't be like a bum knee that goes out when you least expect it or when you can least afford it to. We need to be reliable, steady, consistent, and loyal. And I don't know too many Christians that I've seen online do that. They are chameleons. And I've been writing about that for years. I even have, I think, a blog post called Chameleon Christians. The Christian community just simply dropped the ball and continue to drop it by being so passive and agreeable and unified that they forget who they're here to represent. The Bible makes in no uncertain terms the point that this is not what we're supposed to be doing. We have to shine. We have to be salty. We have to, as Paul put it, have the aroma of Christ. Let me look that up real quick. I think I used the word fragrance. Try to search on that. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, 2 Corinthians 2:15. Let me go get 2 Corinthians 2. Yeah, I should do JavaScript on this sometimes, but I like to keep the code simple. 2:15, let's see. All right, 2:14, we'll start this last paragraph here. Now thank God, the one who always grants us victory with the anointed. He spreads the aroma of the knowledge of him through us everywhere. For we are the fragrance of God, both to those who are being saved and those who are being destroyed. To the latter, the destroyed ones, we are the stench of impending death. But to the former, we are the fragrance of promised life. But who is up to the task? For we are not like most people who peddle the word of God, but instead we are sincere because we speak of God and from God with the anointed. So we have to have a smell, an aroma, a fragrance as Christians, and the reaction that people have depends on whether they are open, seeking, actually wanting to find truth or not. The people who repel in disgust and horror are the ones we shouldn't waste our time on. If the people are interested and stick around, then talk to those people. But we have to have a smell in the first place, and that's what it means to be salt and light and not to be lukewarm. It means that you have some kind of unique characteristic that makes people know who you represent. And that means speaking up, and that means having a ready defense. So that's the thing, is just looking quick at the chat here. It is hard to be on the fence when all the reasons for beliefs has to be stated out loud. Exactly. And a lot of Christians just simply took the gift, the adoption, and then never bother to visit their adoptive family, and that doesn't mean going to church. As tradition has had it. I've had a lot to say about that. I wrote a book about it, about hierarchy. That's included. It's not just the male-female issue. It's the clergy-laity issue. It's all hierarchy. That's what the book is about. But we have to know what we believe and why it is the truth as opposed to everything else. And for Christians, that one truth that stands out is that Jesus rose from the dead. And we know this because of eyewitness testimony to the events of his life, death, and resurrection, and because of other effects of that testimony through the ages, through history, the last almost 2,000 years, plus personal experiences today. We can point to all of that, put it all together, the documents, the testimonies, and the changed lives, and say, this is the truth. And this is unlike any other religion when you think about it. Now, the ravenous wolves that the Bible talks about happened. And so we have to be careful that we don't do the fake religion thing. And let me look that up. Do the search. Just, to show you how the website can actually search a little bit. I'm going to get a bunch of hits on that one, but I can't put too much. Let me see. Apparently on that. Let me do a search on wolf or wolves. And that. This is about the wolves in sheep's clothing in Matthew 7:15. Sending you out, Matthew 10:16, Jesus was sending people out as sheep among wolves, so be as shrewd as serpent, yet as pure as doves. I mentioned that the other day. Acts 20:29. So let's go get Acts 20. Acts 20. And verse 29, or thereabouts. Paul is saying goodbye to people. I think it was Ephesus. I'm not sure. Yeah. He sent for the elders of the congregation in Ephesus, not a head pastor. There's no such thing. He sent for the elders, which are people who have shown by their lives and teachings that they are worthy of being mentors. That's what elders are. And he's, and Paul's giving them this farewell speech, and that suffering and confinement awaited him. He says they'll never see his face again, and he's basically settling accounts with them. And then he says, pay close attention to yourselves and to the whole flock, which the Holy Spirit appointed you as guardians. And here again, a guardian, the guards on the walls are not the kings. They're not the bosses. They just protect the perimeter, which is to say they look out for false teachings and warn when they are approaching. And fellow Christians are not supposed to throw rocks at the guards on the walls to tell them to shut up, which has been my experience consistently over the years from fellow believers. Most of the attacks have been from them, who are supposed to have my back, not jump on my back. And anyway, this is what Paul is saying, that elders are supposed to be guardians. The Holy Spirit appointed them as guardians, not other people, not a seminary. The Holy Spirit is who confirms a person as a guardian or elder. Shepherd, which is not to say control or boss, you just guard the perimeter. That's what a shepherd does. They guard the sheep. Shepherd the congregation of God, which he purchased with his own blood. It's God's congregation, not anyone else's. And then he says, in that context, I know that as soon as I'm out of reach, oppressive wolves will invade you and show no mercy to the flock. Men will, and it says men in the text there, it's or males, will also rise up from among you and say twisted things in order to acquire disciples to follow them. This is church history in a nutshell. It was predicted and it happened. As I've mentioned before, the historian Philip Schaff said that the early church could not long endure the lofty heights of the freedom that they had from that, the original Christianity gave them, that the teachings of Jesus and the apostles, and they couldn't for long hold off their old ways of religious practice, whether they were heathen that were, used to their rites and temples and altars, and whether it was Jews who had the same background. They went back to religious practice after they had been set free and the prison doors were open. They went back and they just gilded the cage. And so this is what Paul was predicting in Acts 20 here, where he says that as soon as I'm gone, people will turn this back into religion. And that's exactly what happened. And that's the Christianity we need to not keep perpetuating. It's the one where you stand up politely but boldly and have the aroma of Christ and take a stand and keep people from following this new age word soup. For latecomers, just a brief recap. I started with a quote of Orwell about people using words and phrases like a cuttlefish squirting out ink to confuse other people. And I showed this page where you can simulate New Age talk. People took the words of Deepak Chopra from a speech of his and put it in a database and made an algorithm that will randomly generate words and phrases. And you can actually use this to create a website, and they encourage you here to do so, of New Age, and write a book, write a bestseller from it, and no one will know the difference, because people think when they don't understand the words or they don't make sense, that instead of just being nonsense, they say it's profound. And this is how people are being dragged into the New Age way of looking at things, and why this is the road to the worship of the beast in the tribulation. I won't go over all that again, but then I brought up some scriptures, and I've had one, I've changed these a couple times, but this one was about guarding the flock against these false teachings, and Christians are not doing it. Even most of the pastors, it seems, which is a term that shouldn't be a position, it's a gift like any other, and it's actually only mentioned once in the entire New Testament. There we see about elders, guardians, shepherds, and what those people do. They're one and the same group of people in any location, is that they have already shown by the way they live and the way they talk that they have it together as mentors that other people could look up to. That's what they're supposed to do, and they're supposed to know falsehood and guard against it and protect people from it. But they are not to be bosses. This is not a hierarchy. And Paul predicted this when he said goodbye to the people in Ephesus in Acts 20, and said, and like I said, that historians have noted that this is exactly what happened. As soon as the apostles were gone, within one generation, the church had gone back to religious practice and rites and rituals and hierarchies, and put themselves in what I call a gilded cage. Jesus came to set us free and open the prison doors, and only a fool stays inside and makes it, tidies up the place. And that's exactly what the Christian church at large has done all these centuries. And people, it's no wonder that the unbelievers mistake us for, Catholicism or other quote unquote high church, such as the Lutheran denomination, the Anglicans. It's all very high church. Now, again, if it makes people close to God to have the formality, the classical music, I wouldn't mind that at all. But when that's all there is, it's no better to err on one side than the other when people forget that this is not a religion, it's a relationship, and they make it look like a religion anyway. People have different preferences when it comes to worshiping God, and that's fine. But it shouldn't be the sum total of our religious relationship thing, the difference between those two words. Because the relationship shouldn't stand or fall on whether you got a feeling at a service. Okay? It's nice to do that, but it shouldn't be required. As is to say, if you didn't get to go to either a high or a low church service, would your face still be there? Without all the sugar coating. I don't mean to say sugar coating in the sense of hiding what's beneath, like I was saying yesterday, with people just grabbing random ingredients in the kitchen and trying to make something with it. What I mean is that we have to remember what the core is, and that is that we have been adopted as children of God. And so if we forget that, then we'll look for religious experience in all the wrong places. So anyway, I also had showed this issue about how to stand and being ready with a defense of your belief, not just your personal testimony, but knowing what you believe and why it's the truth. How else can you show people how to find the truth and how to be saved if you don't know how to get there yourself? Even if you did get there yourself, it's like if I'm a passenger in the car, I don't pay attention to where we're going or how we got there usually, unless I'm being asked to navigate, or pay attention to where we park. If I wasn't driving, I couldn't tell you where the car is. But as Christians, we're supposed to know, if somebody said, hey, let me take this to your car, and I was going, well, I don't know where it is. That doesn't mean I wasn't there and didn't ride in the car. And the analogy being, it doesn't mean I wasn't saved. It just means I forgot how I got there. I didn't pay attention. And as Christians, that's what this verse is about. You have to pay attention to how you got to where you are and remember it so you can tell other people. It's just if you were starving and a bunch of people you were with were starving and you went foraging and found a whole cache of food, would you just sit there and gorge it all, or would you go back and tell everybody you found food? And what if you forgot where the stash of food was? That would be terrible. Well, it's even more terrible spiritually, because here we are with an opportunity in this conspiracy realm to tell people where the food is, but all they want to do is run around in the woods looking for whatever they find instead of going to the place where the big cache of food is. Because the Christians are not remembering how to get there. They don't even care. They just want to go running in circles with all the other lost people and, skip merrily along with them because unity, because peace. Never mind that this is about starving people spiritually that we're not helping just by sitting around and smiling. That's not how you spread the gospel. You have to say words. You have to have actions that match the words. It's like the lyrics in the tune. They have to match. I know there was a song by a progressive rock band decades ago that had a really awesome tune, but the words were terrible and depressing. It was a happy sound and sad words, and I just don't like that song because of that. I want the tune by itself without the words, but can't get it. And that's the way the gospel is. You have to have the lyrics and the tune match, and it has to be, you can't go around selling fire insurance, as I call it, telling people that God hates them and wants to send them to hell, but, if you want mercy, you must grovel. That's not the gospel. The gospel is that God, because of what Jesus did, we are being offered adoption as God's children. This is a happy thing. And you can't, as I said, fool, coerce, or guilt people into a happy thing. You have to know how you got there, which is to say, the basis of our faith is eyewitness accounts of Jesus rising from the dead, and that if we trust him as being the truth that he said he is, then we will be reconciled and adopted. So we have to know the way to truth, the way to salvation, the way to unity with our Creator, and Jesus is the way. And if we don't know that, then how do we know we were saved? And yes, each of us has to do that. We can't be spoon-fed how you were saved. You have to know what's behind it. What did you believe when you were saved? If you believe Jesus rose from the dead because there's eyewitnesses and evidence, and you're trusting him to reconcile you to God, and you got the Holy Spirit when that happened, whether you felt something or not, and that you are adopted as a child of God, and because of that, you change your behavior and you carry the family name now wherever you go, and you don't shamefully hide that name or run around with people who hate that name. And it's really not that complicated. Where we are beyond that, spiritual growth, is a completely different issue. But salvation itself is what we're here to spread to do is spread the gospel. And we're not doing it collectively as a Christian community. We're just going along to get along and not making waves. And as I said in that other verse I had quoted, showed on the screen, that we are the aroma of Christ. And if someone recoils in disgust when they smell that aroma, then those people you shouldn't waste your time on. But you have to have an aroma. And you have to not only walk the walk, but talk the talk. You have to have the words to go with the music. You have to not only act like a Christian, because anybody can do that. Satan worshipers can put on an act like that. People of all religious or anti-religious views can be nice people, sometimes nicer than a lot of Christians I know. But if you don't speak the gospel, how will anyone know that you have the truth? Will you tell them that God, their creator, wants to adopt them as children? You have to have both. There's no way around it. And also, if you have the truth and you speak it accurately, but you don't act like it, that's not right either. That will turn people away, which has been a big problem for years and years, centuries, where Christians say one thing and do another. And this is a big issue. Yes, other people do that too, like the New Agers, for example, with talking about peace and love and unity, except for you, like the one video I did also, and aside from the goodbye video, except for you, ABC, anything but Christianity. They're peaceful and loving and unifying and accepting and tolerant as long as you don't smell like a Christian. And long as you're not too salty, and long as you aren't putting out too bright of a light. And they won't know that any of that online, especially by only how nice you are. There are lots of nice people. But like I said, if they're not nice to you after you come out, so to speak, as a follower of Jesus who will not compromise their beliefs, and this is our personal conviction, suddenly you find out who's really nice person and who really believes in tolerance and unity and who does not. And I don't know any other way to make that separation, and that's what truth does. It separates. It doesn't unify. So here again, Orwell, word soup is for confusing people. It's for distracting them from the truth. And he used the word cuttlefish in there, which is why I put that in the title, which, we think more of a squid spurting out ink. But this is that page where you can fake be a New Age guru, which a lot of people do, and everybody falls for it who thinks they're awake. Guard against false teachings. Know them when you see them. Be salt and light. And be prepared. And this is a message that Christians should have been teaching each other for a couple thousand years and have dropped the ball in large measure. Yes, churches have done a lot of good things, and many hospitals, especially in the Western world, were begun by Christians. Especially America and before that England sent out a large number of missionaries all over the world. We've done a lot of good in spite of everything, but Paul said, when I'm gone, these people will arise and twist everything. And that's exactly what happened. And they turned the relationship back to religion. So I guess that's all I have to say. It's mostly about the word soup of the New Age movement, the Luciferian teaching that Yahweh is bad and Lucifer is good, and that Yahweh is trying to hide things from us and restrict us and keep us in a cage, when in fact he is just keeping us from falling into the trap, the mouth of the anglerfish with its lure in front of its face, saying, look at this pretty light over here, and it will devour you if you go there. And I'm watching the conspiracy world run as fast as they can toward that lure. And the Christians aren't even putting up the mildest defense. They're not even saying, hey, don't go that way. Don't go to the light. Like a scene from Bug's Life where there's a couple of, somebody's trailer has a bug zapper outside and two bugs are flying along. And one says, I'm going to check out that pretty light over there. And the other says, no, don't go to the light. And the other one says, I can't help it. It's so beautiful. Well, that's exactly what, of course it got zapped then. And that's exactly what's going on in the conspiracy realm, especially. And the Christians are not even saying, don't go to the light. In the chat, as far as all and everyone, consider the context. I'm just speaking in generalities. I'm talking about the church in general. I'm talking about the conspiracy world in general. This is why miscommunications happen, is context is not always considered. And there are always exceptions, of course, but here again, it goes against us as well, where people will lump all Christians into the Roman Catholic Church, for example, or into the hypocrite box, which, is hypocritical on their part, as I've said before. But yeah, it's not a blanket condemnation. It's a generality, and you can recognize generalities. But because this is so important, this issue of Christians being salt and light, and knowing what's going on here with, when we know that these word soup, New Age, Luciferian Gnostic teaching is leading people away from the Creator, that when we had a brief opportunity to lead them to the true Creator and we missed it, I'm saying collectively, just like Daniel, when he prayed to God about the sins of his people, he included himself, even though he wasn't any of the people who ever rebelled against God. He stood strong for God, and yet he included himself in the group of people who had abandoned God and been sent into captivity because of it, even though he personally was not guilty. He was speaking as a spokesperson, as a representative of the group. And that's what I'm trying to do, is say that, as I try to use terms like vast majority, etc., that people are, the Christians as a general group, I'm seeing, knowing how many Christians there are in the conspiracy realm and how few understand, what's going on with this, quantum physics masquerading, serving as a mask over Luciferian doctrine, and B, not being salt and light, not standing on their convictions, but putting unity over truth. Those 2 points are the ones I was trying to make today, that as a general rule, given the number of Christians and the few that actually seem to see these things, it is an indictment on all of us, because as a community, we have failed to make this message clear. And I've done my part, but I'm saying we, because I'm part of the Christian community, have failed collectively to be salt and light. And the reason we fail, it could be a lot of reasons, but one of the ones I see common is that we don't know how we ourselves got saved a lot of times, and that we're unaware of the schemes of the devil, even though the Bible tells us to be, as that verse I showed earlier, as wise as serpents, or as cunning, or aware or awake as serpents, and as innocent and pure as doves. So, yeah, I'm going to shut down anyway, so you aren't going to miss anything. But God bless everybody too in the chat, and I think the point's been made enough times that, but you know, quiet morning. There's no other hangouts. There's, as the saying used to go, there's nothing good on TV, so why not make my own show? So anyway, catch y'all later. Thanks for coming.